What would you do if someone took everything from you? Your hard-earned money, your trust, your time, and your peace of mind. If they just stole it all and walked away, leaving you with nothing but the hollow feeling of betrayal. What if the law couldn't help? What if you were left to deal with the loss on your own? This is the story of a man who had wealth, until he was deceived by someone who didn't just take his money, but shattered everything he believed in. A man who, after losing everything, took matters into his own hands and found out the hard way that justice has its own price. Welcome to True Crime Theatre HQ. For more gripping stories like this, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you won't miss our next deep dive into true crime. Before the scam, Lucas Bryant lived a life many would envy. At 45, he had built a solid career in real estate. His business was successful, providing him with a comfortable lifestyle in downtown Chicago. He had a small circle of friends, reliable people who respected him for his work ethic and integrity. Lucas had always been the type to go the extra mile, whether in business or in his personal life. His work kept him busy, but his personal life was another story. Lucas wasn't someone who shared his thoughts and feelings easily. His friends knew him as reliable, but there was an underlying loneliness that came with his success. He had the house, the car, the career, but no one to truly share it with. He often thought about relationships, about finding someone to fill the emptiness. But trust didn't come easy for him. Years of focusing on his career meant that romantic relationships had always taken a backseat. Still, deep down, Lucas wanted companionship, a partner who could match his ambition, who could laugh with him after a long day and share the quiet moments. And then he decided to take a chance. Lucas signed up for a dating app. It was a simple decision, really. He wasn't looking for anything too serious at first. Just someone to talk to. Someone who could offer a connection beyond the usual work emails and client meetings. That's when he met Samantha. She wasn't anything like the other profiles Lucas had come across. Her messages were different, more personal, more genuine. Samantha was charming, witty, and seemed like she understood the challenges Lucas had faced in his life. They laughed about their favorite books, shared opinions on films, and even talked about their childhoods. Every conversation felt like it could last forever. Samantha's stories were raw and real. She told Lucas about her past, how she had been through some tough times, how life hadn't always been easy for her. She spoke of personal struggles, loss, and survival. It all seemed so real, so human. Lucas, always empathetic and kind, found himself drawn to her. The emotional connection grew quickly. What started as small talk blossomed into late-night conversations. They shared their hopes for the future, things they dreamed about, things they regretted, and everything in between. With every message, Lucas felt like he was getting to know someone who understood him on a deeper level. Samantha seemed to do the same. She'd tell Lucas about her struggles, but always in a way that made her seem stronger for having survived them. It wasn't long before Lucas started to feel like he was more than just talking to a stranger on a screen. He was talking to someone who truly understood him. Someone who might have been through things that were even harder than his own challenges. But soon, things changed. Samantha, whom Lucas had come to care about, began mentioning some financial troubles. At first, it was just a casual comment. Nothing too serious, just the kind of thing one might bring up in a vulnerable moment. She said she was in a difficult situation, one that required her to pay off some unexpected debts. At first, Lucas didn't think much of it. Everyone faces hardships, right? But then the messages kept coming. It wasn't a large amount at first, just a few $100s. But Lucas was hesitant. He had always been cautious with his money. He didn't know Samantha enough to send her anything, even though he desperately wanted to help her. She seemed understanding of his hesitation. She didn't get upset, but she subtly reminded him of the connection they built. He thought about it, about how Samantha had shared so much of herself with him, how she'd opened up about her struggles. Surely, this was just a small bump in the road. He could help, and it would make her life a little easier. It wasn't as though he was being asked for a fortune. A little financial help wouldn't hurt, right? So Lucas took the plunge. He sent her the money, and just like that, the door was open. But what he didn't know was that this would be the first of many requests. And the next time, the amount would be a little higher, then a little higher again, until it wasn't just about helping someone, it was about being caught in a trap. Lucas never saw it coming. As the days passed, Lucas found himself more and more invested in the situation. What began as a simple act of kindness, helping someone in need, soon escalated into a series of requests. Samantha's words were convincing, her stories pulling at his heartstrings every time. She painted vivid pictures of the struggles she was facing. The debts, the bills, the mounting pressure. Each time, it seemed like just a little more help was needed. Every time she reassured him that it was temporary, that everything would be okay once she was back on her feet. Lucas believed her. With each transfer, his hope grew that things would turn around for her. He never imagined he was being manipulated, never thought for a second that the person he was helping had no intention of ever paying him back. Then came the day when he transferred the last of what he could spare, $50,000. At this point, Lucas had already sent her nearly $950,000. The money was gone, but his faith in Samantha was still strong. He convinced himself that she loved him and was sure she would do the same if he needed her help. But the messages that had been flowing steadily from Samantha's side suddenly stopped. No texts, no calls, no messages. For days, Lucas tried reaching out, desperate for some sign that everything was okay, but there was nothing. He sat by his phone, feeling the weight of uncertainty pressed down on him. Maybe she's just busy, he told himself. Maybe she's going through something, but she'll come around. But the hours turned into days, and then into a week, and still no word. Lucas's hope began to turn to suspicion. His heart raced as he dialed her number again, but the line went dead. He tried texting her and still nothing. It wasn't like Samantha to go quiet. She always responded quickly, even if only to reassure him. But this was different. Something wasn't right. Then, in a moment of panic, Lucas did something he should have done much earlier. He Googled Samantha. His fingers trembled as he typed the name into the search bar. What he found sent a cold shiver down his spine. The search didn't turn up a single result linked to the woman he had come to care for. Instead, he found a trail of fake profiles. Profiles under different names in different cities. They were all connected to different scams run by the same person. Someone named Troy Grayson. Lucas's stomach sank as he clicked through the results. Troy Grayson wasn't just some random guy using fake pictures. He was a known scammer with a long list of aliases. And Samantha was just another of his carefully crafted characters. He couldn't believe what he was reading. All those months of trust, all those hours spent talking to someone he thought he was growing closer to, they had all been a lie. Troy Grayson, the man behind the alias of Samantha, had a long history of deceiving people. Lucas dug deeper, and his discovery grew even darker. Grayson had scammed countless victims before him, each one believing in the same sweet promises, the same false hope that Lucas had bought into. Everything Lucas had given, his money, his time, his heart, had been taken from him. It wasn't just the financial loss that stung. It was the betrayal, the realization that someone had used his trust to manipulate him. He had been nothing more than a pawn in a much bigger game. The silence was deafening now. Samantha, no, Troy Grayson, was gone. And Lucas was left with nothing but an empty bank account and a broken heart. Feeling the weight of the betrayal pressing down on him, Lucas made the decision to go to the authorities. He knew he had to do something, anything, to bring this scammer to justice. He couldn't just let it go. But when he walked into the police station, expecting some kind of resolution, he was met with a cold dose of reality. The officer who took his report barely looked up as Lucas explained the situation. "Online scams are common," the officer said with a sigh. "Unfortunately, Unless you have more concrete evidence, there's not much we can do." The words hit Lucas like a punch to the gut. He had already lost everything: his savings, his trust, and his sense of security. And now the system that was supposed to protect him had turned its back. The feeling of helplessness overwhelmed him. The police weren't interested in his case. To them, he was just another victim in a growing pile of online. Lucas walked out of the station, feeling more defeated than ever. He had been betrayed by someone he thought he knew, and now the law, his last hope for justice, was failing him too. It was as if the entire world had conspired to leave him alone in his misery. But something inside him refused to give up. He couldn't just let Troy Grayson get away with it. There had to be another way. That's when Lucas found Eva Morales. Eva was a seasoned private investigator specializing in cyber crimes. She had a reputation for getting results, no matter how difficult the case. When Lucas walked into her office, he was desperate. He explained everything: how he had been scammed, how his trust had been shattered. Eva listened quietly, then nodded. "I'll take your case," she said simply. Her confidence gave Lucas a glimmer of hope. Eva's first step was to dig into Troy's digital footprint. She spent hours poring over every trace Troy had left behind: his social media profiles, the IP addresses, the online transactions. It wasn't long before Eva began to uncover a pattern. Troy Grayson had been running this scam for years, deceiving countless victims. Just like she found traces of other people who had fallen for the same scam, all of them sending money to Samantha under false pretenses. Each victim had their own story, but all of them shared one thing in common: Troy Grayson. Eva wasn't satisfied with just uncovering the scam. She wanted to track him down and bring him to justice. After days of digging, she finally found something concrete: Troy's real identity. His name, his address, and his last known location in Miami. Lucas was shaken, but he also felt a surge of determination. This wasn't just about getting his money back anymore. This was about making sure Troy couldn't hurt anyone else. It was personal now. Lucas booked a flight to Miami the next day. The city felt like a world away from the loneliness that had consumed him back in Chicago. He checked into a small, inconspicuous hotel. His plan was simple: lay low, observe Troy from a distance, and wait for the right moment. For the next few days, Lucas watched as Troy lived the life of luxury he had stolen from others. He partied at high-expend clubs, sipped expensive cocktails, and stayed in a massive beachfront villa. Every time Lucas saw Troy, the rage built up inside him. Troy didn't seem to care about the lives he had ruined. He lived carelessly, enjoying the fruits of his deception. To Troy, Lucas was just another faceless victim, someone he had tricked and left behind. But to Lucas, Troy was the embodiment of everything that had been taken from him. Lucas's obsession grew. He couldn't help but follow Troy wherever he went. He'd watch him slip into clubs, surrounded by people who had no idea who he really was. The carefree attitude, the confidence, it disgusted Lucas. It was a dangerous game, but Lucas wasn't backing down. The stakes had never been higher. Lucas had been watching Troy for days. Tonight, it was time. The anger, betrayal, and loss had built up, and now Lucas couldn't wait any longer. Following Troy down a quiet street, Lucas waited for the right moment. Troy, drunk and stumbling, didn't see him coming. "Hey!" Lucas called out. Troy turned, blinking. Recognition flickered in his eyes. "You don't remember me, do you?" Lucas asked, his voice calm but firm. Troy tried to deny it, but Lucas cut him off. "No more lies. I want everything back." Troy raised his hands in defense. "I can explain." Lucas pulled out the gun without hesitation. "Enough," he said, and squeezed the trigger. The shot echoed in the empty street. Troy collapsed, shock frozen on his face. Lucas stood over him, numb. Sirens wailed in the distance. Lucas dropped the gun, raised his hands, and surrendered without resistance. The chaos around him felt distant as he awaited the inevitable. The investigation began. Media debated whether Lucas was a victim pushed to the edge or a criminal who crossed the line. The truth was messier than either side cared to admit. In court, Lucas sat, facing the consequences of his actions. The prosecutor called him a vigilante. His defense argued the scam had shattered him emotionally. Lucas spoke of the manipulation, the toll the scam had taken on him, and the need for closure. Eva Morales testified about Troy's past victims, painting a picture of a man who had ruined many lives, including Lucas's. The courtroom was divided. Some sympathized with Lucas, others saw a murderer. The verdict was second-degree murder. Lucas was sentenced to 15 years with the possibility of parole. It wasn't justice, but it was the closest he'd get. As he was led out in handcuffs, Lucas realized his life had been irreversibly changed. The world would never see him the same again. Each day in the small, dimly lit cell gave Lucas time to think. The regret was heavy, weighing him down in ways the prison walls couldn't. There were moments when he'd stare out the tiny window, thinking about the man he had once been, the life he had once had. There was no denying the guilt. He couldn't. What he had done was irreversible. But as time passed, Lucas found himself wrestling with something deeper. The realization that he was manipulated by a man who had exploited his vulnerability. The scam that had stolen everything from him was a cruel twist of fate. As he worked out and read, he came to see that the life he had lost wasn't just about the money or even the revenge. It was about his belief in justice. And now, in prison, he was learning the painful truth. The system didn't always deliver justice, but it did deliver consequences. If you've enjoyed this story, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss more gripping tales like this.